everyone. This week on the Daily Dose, we're asking some really tough questions that people kind of wrestle with when it comes to their faith. And I'm going to hit one really pretty hard here today. The question that I'm going to answer for us today is, what's wrong with organized religion? As a pastor, I hear this a lot. People who come to me and they say, you know what, Pastor, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Or they are somehow against organized religion. When I tell them that I'm a pastor and I serve a church, they sit there and say, well, I appreciate what you do, but I am against organized religion. I'll be honest, this includes members of my own family. They don't necessarily disagree that there is a God, but that God is somehow involved in our lives in some way, but they believe in a God who shows up spiritually, but a God who doesn't show up necessarily in the church. And so they have set themselves apart and sit there and say that religion is the problem, but not spirituality. This is really a funny thing to me because honestly, if you dig into those conversations a little bit more, it ends up where you sit there and say, well, tell me about why you don't believe in organized religion. And they start to say things that include history things like, and news bites and all these things, they come up. And please hear me. I do agree that religion has messed some things up in the past. People have used religion to justify their own poor behavior. And we look at scandals over sex abuse, or pastors who have rose to such a level of leadership before they encountered a scandal that just closed down a church here or there. It seems to me that there are all these mega church pastors who have been focused so hard on building their brand that they forgot to follow Jesus in the first place. Think about it for a second. We blame religion for wars that have taken place in our history. People sit there and say, I don't believe in religion because religion has started all the wars. And this is true. There's occasionally a place where religion has started a war. But if you look at history and you look at all that's happened, and people have studied this, it's only about 8% of known wars in our world ever started because of religion in the first place. So to me, that argument doesn't really seem to stand. I mean, we all know people who've taken the Bible and they've twisted it to mess up the context, or they just ignore the context altogether to make it fit exactly what they want to believe. In the Bible, it's been used to justify all kinds of terrible things by people who are using it to their advantage rather than seeing what the Bible actually has to say. People who use it for their agenda rather than following Jesus and learning from the context in which it was written. I mean, I myself got kicked out of the church, not once, but twice, for being a pregnant teenager. So this is a problem. I get that sometimes there's a problem with organized religion. I get it. Sometimes there are also problems with organized religion. But I think most of the time when people use that excuse that there's something wrong with organized religion, they justify it to not get involved in organized religion. They maybe justify it to not take place in worship or not be part of a community. A lot of times they don't even seem to want to dig deeper or affect change. It's kind of like when you vote or you choose not to vote and then you complain about who's going to be the president. I think far too often when we talk about organized religion, I think we miss the positive side of organized religion. We don't look and really analyze all those things that are good that organized religion has done for our world. When people got together based on a mutual belief of faith, based on thinking that God has called them to do something, and they make something really, really big happen. And this is something that religion does quite often, actually. Things like hospitals and care facilities, you wonder why they're all named things like St. Luke's Hospital or Methodist Hospital. It's because organized Christians came together to ensure that sick people and elderly people are cared for. Both the abolitionist movement in our country in the Civil War and the civil rights movement of the 1960s, they were led by Christians who said, you know what, this is not okay that we have this separation. Instead, we need to come together. We need to make it legal. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., or who is actually Pastor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he felt that he was moved and encouraged by his faith to go and lead protests that were peaceful as opposed to weaponizing. Most of the arts, if you look at the arts, most of the arts have actually been commissioned by people who were brought forth by organized religion. A lot of higher education. So much of higher education has been formed and founded in organized religion. Social justice or service organizations, things like food shelves and shelters and social work agencies and things like Habitat for Humanity. All of these things come from organized religion. When war takes place in the world, who is the first to go down and not fight the war, but help people who've been victims of the wars? It's things like charities and NGOs. Teams like the Red Cross and the Salvation Army lead the way. Those are organized religion. So if we're going to judge organized religion, or if we're going to discount organized religion, I think we need to look at both the positives and the negatives. Because in my view, I think the positive outweighs the negative. I know there are times in my life when my faith has gotten all the way down to zero. And if it wasn't for the organized religion part that kept me there, I think I would have lost my faith. But I was given a community, and I was given a way to move forward out of those faith crises. Religion, it's a group of anytime 2 or more people are gathered. And I suppose anytime 2 or more people are gathered, the tendency is that we can screw things up. I can't even keep my family organized. So sometimes it does go off to one side. But here's what I know for sure. I know for sure that you can't make a change on something if you're on the outside of it. Instead, if there are things that bother you about organized religion, or things that you struggle with about organized religion, I think then we have to jump in. We have to jump in, and we have to have some conversations with other people in order to change those things for the better, just like people who started hospitals and care centers. My friends, God invites us into community. And God also gives us this community knowing that it's messy and complicated, and that no 2 people are going to see things exactly the same. But that's kind of the beauty of it. That's what makes it into the living Word of God. When we act with love, and we listen, and we care for each other, it's amazing what God can do with any kind of religion. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Daily Dose. Come back tomorrow and we'll answer some more tough questions.